Welcome to Learn and Talk English. We're all about making English learning simple and fun, especially for beginners.
Yeah, learning a new language can seem a bit scary, but we're here to help every step of the way.
I remember when I was learning my first new language, it felt like just drowning in grammar rules and vocabulary
Oh
lists.
yeah, I completely understand that.
Okay.
A lot of people they think about language learning like it's about memorizing things.
Right. It was like trying to just stuff all this information into my brain, but not really understanding how to actually use it.
What if I told you there's a more natural, more effective way to learn English?
Really. I'm all ears. Tell me more.
It's called language acquisition. So instead of focusing on all the rules, it's about immersing yourself in the language and letting your brain kind of naturally pick up the patterns.
That sounds really cool. How does that actually work?
Well, think about how kids learn their first language. They don't, study grammar textbooks or memorize verb conjugations. They just listen to the language around them and they start imitating what they hear.
That's true. They just soak it all up.
Exactly. And that same process can work for adults too.
So are you saying we should like try to learn English more like children do?
Yeah, kind of, in a way. Of course, adults have, different learning styles and needs than children, but the basic idea is still the same. We need to expose ourselves to as much real-world English as we can.
I see. But wouldn't that be a little overwhelming,
Huh.
especially for beginners? I mean, diving into something like Shakespeare right away probably isn't the best idea.
You're absolutely right. The key is to find what we call comprehensible input. That just means finding English content that you can mostly understand, even if you don't know every single word.
So it's kind of like finding the right stepping stones to gradually build our skills.
Exactly. So when you're starting out, visual aids can be super helpful. Things like children's cartoons with clear pictures or simple videos that use a lot of gestures.
So instead of starting with like a really dense novel, maybe try watching a fun animated movie.
Exactly. And then as you get better, you can gradually, move on to more challenging stuff like children's books, graphic novels, or even podcasts designed for English learners. The key is to always challenge yourself a bit, but not so much that you feel completely lost.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. But even with this comprehensible input, wouldn't it get kind of boring after a while? I mean, nobody wants to watch kids' cartoons forever.
You're right. You're right. The content definitely needs to be engaging, to keep you motivated. Think about your hobbies and what you're interested in. Do you love music? Find some English songs that you enjoy and sing along. Are you a movie buff? Watch English films with subtitles? Into cooking? Find some English language recipes and try them out.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. It's about finding ways to make English part of the things we already love doing.
Exactly. The more you kind of surround yourself with the language, the faster you'll progress. It's kind of like, immersing yourself in a new culture, right?
Cool.
The more you experience it, the more you'll understand it.
Hmm. But what about grammar? Don't we need to learn all those rules so we can speak correctly?
Well, grammar is important, but it shouldn't be your main focus, especially in the beginning. It's like this, imagine you're trying to learn to play the piano. You wouldn't spend all your time just studying music theory without even touching the keys, right?
That would be super frustrating.
Exactly. Same goes for languages. The best way to learn grammar is through experience. So as you listen to and read more English, your brain will naturally start to pick up on the patterns.
So it's more about like developing an intuition for the language rather than just memorizing a bunch of rules.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I mean, everybody makes mistakes when they're learning something new. That's part of the process.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So instead of getting all caught up in grammar books, we should just jump in and start experiencing the language.
Absolutely. The more you expose yourself to, real world English, the quicker you'll get fluent. And remember, the key is consistency. Even short bursts of daily exposure will make a huge difference over time.
This is all starting to click now. But speaking of like technology, I've heard a lot about how artificial intelligence is changing language learning. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, AI definitely has the potential to completely change, the way we learn languages, but we're still in the early stages.
So there are some really exciting possibilities, but also some challenges, right?
Exactly. Some of the AI-powered tools out there are incredibly helpful, especially for things like, learning new words and practicing your pronunciation.
That makes sense. They can give you personalized feedback and track your progress in a way that you can't really do with traditional methods.
Yeah, exactly. But we need to be careful about how we use these tools.
How do you mean?
Well, you see, some AI programs still rely a lot on just memorizing things and doing drills, which, as we've been talking about, aren't the most effective ways to become fluent.
So it's important to choose AI tools that work in a way that aligns with the principles of language acquisition.
Exactly. Ideally, what we want are AI programs that can create like really immersive and engaging learning experiences, stuff that goes beyond just memorizing words and rules.
It sounds like AI has a lot of potential to help us learn languages in a much more natural and effective way.
Absolutely. But we also need to remember that technology is just a tool. It can't completely replace the human part of language learning.
What do you mean by the human element?
Things like having conversations in real life, immersing yourself in the culture, and that feeling of actually connecting with other people in a new language. Those are essential parts of learning a language that technology can't fully replicate.
I see your point. It's not just about like mastering the technical parts of the language, but also about understanding the culture and the people behind it.
Exactly. Language is so much more than just words and grammar. It's a gateway to a whole world of new experiences and connections.
So it's almost like technology can be this uh, amazing bridge, but we still have to walk across it ourselves to really get to the other side.
I like that. That's a good way to put it. And speaking of bridges, I think, a lot of us, we kind of build this mental bridge to language learning that's maybe a little shaky based on our experiences in school.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. I remember spending hours and hours just, you know, conjugating verbs. It felt like I was a robot, not a speaker.
Right. But think about that analogy of driving. Just because you know all the rules of the road doesn't mean you can handle a car in rush hour traffic.
So it's like the difference between knowing about the language and actually using it in real life situations,
Exactly. And just like with driving, fluency in English comes from practice, from, making those turns, even if you stall out a few times along the way.
which is why finding that comprehensible input is so important,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like finding those comfortable streets to practice on, especially when you're first starting out.
Absolutely. It's like we wouldn't just throw a learner driver onto the freeway right away.
Right.
It's about finding those roads where they can build up their confidence one step at a time.
So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by, the sheer size of the English language, what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, take a deep breath. Remember, every single fluent speaker was once a beginner, fumbling their way through, just like you.
It's easy to forget that when you see someone speaking so effortlessly.
It's kind of like watching a figure skater, gliding around gracefully. You don't see the years and years of like falls and wobbly ankles that they went through to get there.
Oh, that's such a great point. So instead of trying to be perfect, we should embrace those stumbles along the way
Yeah.
as just part of the learning process.
Exactly. Each stumble is like, it's giving you feedback. It's showing you where you need to, adjust your balance, so to speak.
I like that. Don't be afraid to fall, because that's how you learn to get back up and keep going.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Find yourself a learning buddy, someone to practice with, laugh with, and encourage each other along the way.
Yeah, like having a skating partner, right?
Yeah.
Someone to hold your hand when you're feeling unsteady and to celebrate with you when you nail those triple axels.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of celebrating, it's so important to acknowledge the progress that you make, no matter how small it might seem. Did you learn a new phrase today? Did you use the past tense correctly? Give yourself a high five.
Yeah, those little victories can really help keep us motivated, especially when we hit those inevitable plateaus that everyone goes through.
Absolutely. It's like leveling up in a game, right? Every achievement, every milestone keeps you engaged and makes you want to keep going to reach that next level.
So instead of getting discouraged when we don't, become fluent overnight, we should focus on those smaller wins that add up over time.
Exactly. Celebrate those new vocabulary words, those smoother conversations. Each one is bringing you closer to your goal.
It's all about changing our perspective, right?
Yeah.
Seeing the journey as a series of achievements, not just a race to the finish line.
And speaking of perspective, one thing that I see tripping up a lot of beginners is this fear of sounding, silly.
Oh, I definitely remember feeling that way. Like everyone is judging my accent or my grammar mistakes.
Oh, it's so common. But here's a different way to look at it. Most native English speakers, they're actually thrilled when someone makes an effort to learn their language.
They appreciate the effort, even if it's not perfect.
Exactly. They're much more likely to be impressed than critical. Think about it. Have you ever, laughed at a baby for mispronouncing a word?
Of course not. It's endearing, We celebrate those efforts.
Exactly. So give yourself that same grace. Embrace your inner language learner. And don't be afraid to make those, adorable mistakes.
So instead of letting fear hold us back, we should just embrace the awkwardness and go for it.
Precisely. The more you speak, the more confident you'll become. And remember, confidence is contagious.
So the more we speak, even with mistakes, the more comfortable we feel. And that encourages us to keep practicing and getting better.
Exactly. It's like a positive feedback loop. The more you put yourself out there, the better you'll get, and the more you'll want to keep going.
And that brings us back to, the importance of finding engaging materials and activities, things that make us excited to learn.
Absolutely. If you're enjoying the process, you're much more likely to stick with it. It's like anything else in life. Passion fuels persistence.
So it's not just about studying grammar rules in textbooks, but about finding those sparks of joy that make us want to keep exploring the language.
Precisely. Find those English language books that make you want to stay up all night reading. Discover those podcasts that make you laugh out loud on your commute.
It's about making English a part of your life, not just something you study.
Exactly. And remember, the more you can integrate English into your daily routine, the faster you'll progress.
So it's like creating this positive cycle. The more we enjoy the process, the more we learn. And the more we learn, the more we enjoy it.
That's the beauty of language acquisition. It's a journey of discovery, of constantly expanding your horizons and connecting with the world in new and exciting ways.
And speaking of connections, one of the most rewarding things about learning English is that it gives us the ability to communicate with people from all over the world.
Absolutely. It's like unlocking this secret door to a global community. Suddenly, you can have conversations with people you never could have imagined before.
It's like breaking down those barriers and building bridges through the power of language.
Exactly. And those connections can enrich your life in so many ways, You can learn about different cultures, share your own experiences, and even make lifelong friends.
It's really incredible to think about all the possibilities that open up when we learn a new language.
And remember, it's never too late to start. No matter how old you are or what your background is, you have the potential to become fluent in English.
It's all about finding the right approach, embracing the journey, and never giving up on your dreams. Yeah, it really is like that saying, the world is a book and those who don't travel only read one page. But learning English, it's like you could read so many more chapters.
That's a great analogy. And, as we wrap up our talk about language acquisition today, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the secret ingredient to success in language learning?
Well, it's not so much a secret as it is a change in how you think about things. Try to see yourself not just as someone who's learning English, but as someone who speaks English.
Oh, I see. So even if we're just starting out, we should try to think of ourselves as someone who can already communicate in English.
Exactly. It's kind of like when you try on a new outfit for the first time, it might feel a little weird at first, but the more you wear it, the more comfortable and confident you become.
I get it. It's about owning it even when it feels awkward in the beginning.
Right. Because remember, even the most fluent speakers, they all started somewhere. They stumbled, they made mistakes, but they just kept speaking, and that's how they got to where they are now.
So it's not about waiting until we feel ready to speak. It's more about just jumping in and learning by doing.
Exactly. And remember, practice doesn't have to mean like formal lessons or anything like that. It can be as simple as just talking to yourself in English, describing your day, or even having conversations in your head.
So even if we don't have someone to practice with, we can still work on our speaking skills and build up our confidence just by using the language in our own way.
That's right. And the more you do that, the more natural and comfortable it'll start to feel.
It's kind of like exercising a muscle, right?
Yeah.
The more we use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And just like with exercise, the key is to be consistent. Even just a few minutes of speaking practice each day will add up over time.
So instead of feeling like we have to study for hours and hours, we can just focus on making speaking practice a regular part of our day, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Make it a habit, like brushing your teeth or checking your email.
And of course, the more fun we have with it, the more likely we are to keep doing it.
Absolutely. Remember, learning a language should be enjoyable, not a chore. So find those activities that really interest you, connect with other learners, and celebrate all the progress you make along the way.
And to everyone listening out there, remember that you can become fluent in English. It's not some magical ability that only certain people have. It's a skill. And anyone can learn it if they have the right approach, the dedication, and a positive attitude.
And if you're ever feeling discouraged, remember that there are so many other people out there who are on the same journey as you. Connect with them, share your experiences, and support each other.
Because learning a language is so much more rewarding when you have other people to share it with.
Definitely. It's like you're joining this huge global conversation where you can share your ideas, your perspective, your stories with the whole world.
And on that inspiring note, we want to thank you all for joining us today on the Learn and Talk English podcast. We hope this episode has given you some new insights into language acquisition and inspired you to keep going on your English learning journey.
Remember, it's all about immersing yourself in the language, finding the joy in it, and never giving up on your goals.
Keep practicing, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. We'll be back next week with more tips and tricks to help you on your English learning adventure.
Until then, happy learning.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more episodes. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to talk about, feel free to leave us a comment below.
We love hearing from you.
See you next time.